autism. You have an advanced form of congenital analgesia.
They're just kids. The most dangerous?
No, nobody here.
Hey, I think I just saw somebody. You fucking asshole!
Wrong Turn 4, Bloody Beginnings, 2011, three-line hook think, you know the darkest secrets behind the wrong turn killers. Today on Review Wala, we uncover the shocking facts, brutal moments, and hidden details of Wrong Turn 4. Bloody Beginnings. Stay till the end because this snowy nightmare has more twists than you expect. The Wrong Turn 4. Bloody Beginnings is a 2011 slasher movie written and directed by Declan O'Brien. It's the fourth movie in the Wrong Turn series and also works as the first prequel to the original Wrong Turn from 2003. The movie stars Jennifer Pudavik, Tenika Davis, Caitlin Wong, and Tara Venisa. The story follows a group of college students who head out on a snowmobile trip, but things go seriously wrong when they get lost during a nasty snowstorm. With nowhere else to go, they find an abandoned sanatorium and decide to take shelter there. What they don't know is that the place is already home to a group of seriously messed up, deformed cannibals. Wrong Turn 4. Bloody Beginnings was released on home media on October 25, 2011 by 20th Century Fox Home Entertainment. The movie didn't exactly win over the critics and got a pretty rough response when it came to reviews. Still, it pulled in around $3.6 million from home video sales. The movie was later followed by Wrong Turn 5, Bloodlines, which came out in 2012. The movie kicks off in 1974 at Glenville Sanatorium, a hospital for people with serious mental illnesses. Dr. Ryan is giving a local psychiatrist, Dr. Anne McQuaid, a tour of the place. During the tour, we meet three young versions of the killers from the earlier movies: One Eye, Three Finger, and Sawtooth. At this point, they're still kids and are locked up inside the hospital, but these three aren't staying locked up for long. They manage to escape using a hairpin they get from Dr. McQuaid. Once they're free, they start letting other dangerous patients out of their rooms. The hospital quickly turns into total chaos. The three cannibals brutally attack and kill an orderly, a security guard, Dr. Ryan, and Dr. McQuaid. After that bloody opening, the movie jumps forward to the year 2003. In the present day part of the story, 9 college students are heading out for a snowmobile trip. The group includes Kenya, Sarah, Bridget, Lauren, Jenna, Claire, Kyle, Vincent, and Daniel. They're planning to stay at their friend Potter's cabin in the mountains. But while they're traveling, a huge snowstorm hits and they lose their way. With the weather getting worse, they spot the abandoned Glenville Sanatorium and decide it's their best shot at getting out of the storm. The group has no idea that the three cannibals are still living inside the old sanatorium. Now fully grown, One Eye, Three Finger, and Sawtooth have turned the abandoned hospital into their hunting ground. They've been hiding there and taking out anyone unlucky enough to wander inside. The movie never really explains what happened to all the other patients who escaped back in 1974. The college kids explore the creepy old hospital and decide to wait inside until the storm passes. At first, they treat the place like it's some kind of weird vacation spot. They mess around in wheelchairs, drink alcohol, use drugs, and basically act like a bunch of college kids stuck in a strange building. But the storm refuses to let up, so they eventually realize they're going to have to spend the night there. Later that night, Vincent can't sleep, so he decides to walk around the sanatorium. While exploring the dark halls, he finds Potter's horribly mutilated body. It looks like Porter never even made it to his cabin. Before Vincent can do anything, Sawtooth attacks him. He kills Vincent by driving a metal rod through his chin and straight out through the top of his head. The next morning, the group realizes they're still completely snowed in. They also notice that Vincent is missing. Everyone splits up to search for him. While looking around, Jenna sees the cannibals cutting up Porter's body. She freaks out and runs back to warn everyone. The group eventually gathers inside the auditorium, hoping they can figure out what's going on. Suddenly, something wrapped in Porter's jacket gets thrown toward them. Kenya opens it and discovers Porter's severed head inside. Everyone completely loses it and rushes toward the doors, trying to escape. But there's a huge problem: the doors are locked. Then the three cannibals show up in the balcony above them. They throw down a piece of barbed wire and wrap it around Claire's neck. They pull her up toward the balcony while Kyle desperately tries to save her. Unfortunately, he's too late. The wire tightens around Claire's neck and kills her. The remaining survivors, Kenya, Sarah, Bridget, Lauren, Jenna, Kyle, and Daniel, manage to get outside. They rush toward their snowmobiles, hoping they can finally get away. But none of the snowmobiles will start. The reason is simple. The cannibals removed the spark plug wires from the engines. Lauren decides to ski down the mountain by herself to find help. The others head back inside the sanatorium because they have no other choice. Kenya, Bridget, Sarah, Jenna, Kyle, and Daniel lock themselves inside an office. While searching the room, they find old files about the three killers. The files reveal that One Eye, Three Finger, and Sawtooth are severely deformed and have a history of cannibalism. Sarah grabs a fire poker to use as a weapon. Daniel and Kyle decide to search for more weapons. Kyle remembers a room full of knives and saws that they found earlier while looking for Vincent, but while they're moving through the building, Three Finger starts chasing them with an axe. They make it to the room filled with knives and saws, quickly lock themselves inside, and hide while Three Finger searches for them. At the same time, One Eye tries to break into the office where Kenya, Bridget, and Jenna are hiding. He uses a power drill to attack the door, but the girls manage to fight him off. Meanwhile, Sarah, Kyle, and Daniel find a bunch of knives, saws, and other tools they can use to defend themselves. They grab as many weapons as they can and start heading back to the others. But before they can make it, the cannibals grab Daniel, Sarah, Bridget, Kenya, Jenna, and Kyle hear Daniel screaming and go looking for him. They soon discover the cannibals have captured him. One of the killers is cutting pieces of Daniel's skin and cooking them in a pot of boiling oil. Kyle gets separated from the others and ends up discovering the horrible scene for himself. The survivors realize they can't keep running forever, so they come up with a plan to fight back. They manage to trick the cannibals and trap all three of them inside a cell. Kyle wants to take things a step further and burn the killers alive, but Kenya talks him out of it, telling him they shouldn't become killers themselves. Sarah, Bridget, Kenya, and Jenna leave to search for the spark plug wires that were removed from their snowmobiles. Kyle stays behind to keep an eye on the trapped cannibals, but Three Finger isn't done yet. He finds the same type of hairpin that was used to help the cannibals escape decades earlier. Using it, he picks the lock and gets the cell door open. Sawtooth then grabs Kyle by the throat and punches him. The screen cuts to black, leaving his fate unclear. Kenya goes back to check on Kyle, but discovers that both Kyle and the cannibals are gone. She runs back to the office and reunites with Sarah, Bridget, and Jenna. The four girls decide their best move is to stay hidden until morning. Suddenly, one of the cannibals appears wearing a potato sack over his head. Thinking it's one of the killers, the girls attack him and stab him to death. But then they discover the horrible truth. The person under the sack is actually Kyle. The cannibals had cut out his tongue so he couldn't speak, and the girls had accidentally killed their own friend. The three cannibals soon find the girls, forcing them to run into the attic. While hiding up there, they find some old winter clothes and put them on to protect themselves from the freezing weather. They then make their way back downstairs and search for a way out. Eventually, they find a window they can escape through, but almost every window has metal bars covering it. Luckily, one of the windows has a damaged grate. Sarah manages to rip the grate away and smash the glass. The girls climb through the opening and make it outside into the snow. Jenna is the last one to climb through the window. Sadly, she doesn't make it far. One of the cannibals catches her and kills her with a power drill. Now only Kenya, Sarah, and Bridget are left. The three girls run through the snow while the cannibals chase them on the stolen snowmobiles. Bridget gets caught, but she fights back and uses her knife to stab one of the killers in the arm. Kenya also gets injured during the chase. Bridget tries to keep running, but one of the cannibals catches up to her on a snowmobile. He drives the vehicle's wheel directly against her body, killing her. As morning finally starts to break, we learn what happened to Lauren. She never made it to the road for help. She froze to death in the snow, only a short distance away from the road. If she had made it just a little farther, she might have survived. The movie then cuts back to the cannibal chasing Kenya on a snowmobile. Just when it looks like Kenya is about to be caught, Sarah grabs a log and smashes the killer with it. The two girls manage to take the snowmobile and speed away through the snowy wilderness. But their escape doesn't last long. They suddenly crash into a barbed wire fence. The wire catches both girls and brutally decapitates them. Three Finger then walks over to their bodies, picks up their severed heads, and throws them into the back of the same yellow tow truck that appeared in the first Wrong Turn movie. He climbs into the truck with the other cannibals, and the killers drive away into the snowy wilderness. And just like that, the movie ends with the three cannibals once again getting away with their bloody killing spree. The casting process for Wrong Turn 4, Bloody Beginnings, relied heavily on Canadian talent, particularly performers based in or connected to Manitoba and Ontario, reflecting the film's production base in the province. Stephanie Gorin and Jim Heber handled casting duties, drawing from established Canadian acting pools and emerging faces who could deliver the physical demands and emotional range required for a direct to video horror entry centered on isolated college students confronting deformed cannibals in an abandoned sanatorium. Gorin's extensive credits in both film and television, including multiple entries in the Saw franchise and later high profile projects, positioned her to identify performers capable of balancing everyday student dynamics with escalating terror. Heber's contributions complemented this by focusing on precise role fits within the ensemble structure. Jennifer Pudavic, credited in some sources as Jenny Pudavic, took the central role of Kenya Perrin, one of the primary survivors navigating the group's deteriorating situation. Born August 20, 1982, in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Pudavic brought prior experience in Canadian television and film, including early horror appearances in Wishmaster 3 and Wishmaster 4. Her background included a bronze medal in team rhythmic gymnastics with the Canadian national team at the 1999 Pan Am Games, lending physical discipline useful for the film's action sequences involving snowmobiles, chases through snowy terrain, and confrontations inside the decaying institution. Pudavic had studied in the University of Winnipeg's theatre program and later earned a marketing certificate from Cornell University. By the time of filming, she had accumulated credits in series such as Cashing In and would go on to prominent roles in Mohawk Girls as Bailey and a recurring part as Gina Morris across multiple seasons of Workin' Moms. In Wrong Turn 4, she functions as a grounding presence among the more reckless students, reacting to discoveries of the sanatorium's history and the brothers' attacks with a mix of leadership and vulnerability. Her performance required sustained intensity across scenes of isolation, loss, and direct confrontation, while also incorporating practical stunt work for which she received additional credit. The choice of a Winnipeg based actress aligned with the production's use of local locations, including the abandoned mental health center in Brandon, Manitoba, and Birds Hill Park areas, allowing for authentic regional energy in the lead. Tenika Davis portrayed Sarah Washington, part of the lesbian couple whose relationship provides both intimacy and tension within the group. Born July 16, 1985, in Toronto and raised in Newmarket, Ontario, Davis entered the industry through modeling after placing as a finalist on the first season of Canada's Next Top Model. She signed with Ford Models and transitioned into acting with early appearances in Saw Vi and a supporting role in Jumping the Broom alongside Angela Bassett and Paula Patton. Her training in Taekwondo from a young age, including national level competition and multiple gold medals, equipped her for the physicality demanded by survival horror sequences involving combat, running, and resistance against the cannibals. Davis's role as Sarah emphasizes both sensuality in quieter moments and resilience under threat, contributing to the film's exploration of interpersonal dynamics before the horror fully erupts. Subsequent career moves included Petra Small in Jupiter's Legacy and the lead gladiatrix Achillea in Spartacus. House of Ashur, demonstrating a trajectory from horror supporting work to more prominent action and dramatic parts. Her casting added diversity and athletic presence to the ensemble of college students stranded by a snowstorm. Caitlin Lieb, then credited as Caitlin Wong, played Bridget Manalo, Sarah's partner. Born June 18, 1988, in North York, Toronto, of Chinese and Irish descent, Lieb held a psychology degree from York University and began in print modeling for campaigns including Virgin Mobile, Dentine Ice, Fusey, and RBC associated with the 2010 Toronto International Film Festival. She had early television appearances in Aaron Stone and Blue Mountain State before Wrong Turn 4. In the film, her character forms one half of the couple whose private moments are interrupted by the unfolding events, requiring chemistry with Davis and reactions ranging from affection to terror. Lieb's later work expanded significantly, including a recurring role as Cassandra on Heartland, Camille Belcourt on Shadowhunters, and various holiday television movies, as well as a memorable three breasted woman in the 2012 Total Recall remake. Her selection reflected the casting director's interest in performers who could convey contemporary young adult relationships while handling genre demands. The dual casting of Davis and Lieb for the couple created a dynamic subplot that humanized the victims before the sanatorium's horrors claimed them. Terra Vanessa embodied Jenna Rivers, another of the students whose decisions contribute to the group's vulnerability. Vanessa's prior credits included work that prepared her for the ensemble driven narrative of college friends on a snowmobiling trip that goes fatally wrong. Her character participates in the early social interactions and later survival efforts, requiring a balance of casual campus energy and escalating panic. The role demanded presence in both group scenes and individual moments of discovery within the abandoned facility. Vanessa's inclusion helped round out the female led core of the student group, ensuring varied personality among the potential victims. Ali Tatarin played Lauren Perry, contributing to the ensemble of friends whose internal conflicts and alliances shaped the story's tension. Tatarin's performance supported the collective dynamic of the group seeking shelter, reacting to the storm, and confronting the reality of the cannibal's presence. Her character participates in the interpersonal drama and the subsequent fight for survival, requiring naturalism in dialogue heavy, early sequences, and physical commitment later. Subsequent credits included Curse of Chucky, indicating continued work in horror. Victor Zink Jr. portrayed Kyle Turner, one of the male students whose actions influenced the group's path. Zink's role involved the outdoor elements of the snowmobile journey and the indoor confrontations, calling for physicality suited to the winter setting and the confined spaces of the sanatorium. His character's decisions and reactions helped drive the narrative toward the climactic encounters with the deformed brothers. Later work included appearances in Motive, showing a move into television drama. Dean Armstrong took on Daniel Burlingame, sometimes listed as Daniel Mullins, another of the college friends. Armstrong's background prepared him for a role that mixed camaraderie with the mounting dread of isolation. His character contributes to the group's attempts at problem solving and defense, requiring both conversational ease and intensity under threat. Armstrong continued with credits including Reacher, demonstrating range beyond the horror genre. Samantha Kendrick appeared as Claire Kendrick, completing the core student ensemble. Her role involved the early group dynamics and later survival sequences, adding another layer to the interpersonal web that the cannibals disrupt. Kendrick's presence helped maintain the sense of a cohesive yet fractious group of friends whose trip turns catastrophic. The Cannibal Brothers received particularly careful casting that emphasized physical presence and family connections within the production. Sean Skene played both Three Finger and Vincent, a dual role that allowed for intriguing contrast between the deformed killer and one of the students. Born in Winnipeg, Skene had established himself in stunts and acting with credits including Goon. His height of 6 feet and physical training suited the imposing, silent menace of Three Finger while also enabling the more conventional portrayal of Vincent in the student group. Skene's brother, Dan Skene, credited as Daniel Skene, portrayed One Eye, creating a genuine familial link among the performers behind the iconic killers. Their father, Rick Skene, served as stunt coordinator, further embedding family involvement in the physical execution of the film's action and horror set pieces. This casting choice reinforced authenticity in the brothers' interactions and movements as the performers shared real life coordination and understanding. Sean Skene's dual performance required switching between the grotesque, largely nonverbal Three Finger, whose signature deformity and brutality define much of the franchise's iconography, and the more conversational Vincent, whose presence among the students creates dramatic irony. Dan Skene's One Eye demanded similar physical commitment, focusing on the character's limited vision and predatory instincts within the confined, snow swept environment of the sanatorium. Scott Johnson embodied Sawtooth as well as an orderly, another dual role that connected the institution's past to its present horrors. Johnson's portrayal of the Sawtooth cannibal required the creation of a distinct physicality through makeup and movement, while the orderly appearance grounded the 1974 prologue sequences. His work contributed to the film's depiction of the brothers' origins during the sanatorium riot and their continued existence decades later. Johnson's later credits included Dirk Gently's holistic detective agency, showing versatility. The younger versions of the brothers in the 1974 opening sequences received dedicated casting to establish the characters' origins. Blane Cypurda played young Three Finger at approximately 8 years old, capturing the early manifestations of the deformity and the institutional environment that failed to contain the siblings. Tristan Carlucci portrayed young One Eye at around 9, emphasizing the childhood roots of the violence. Brian Verrott, also listed as BJ Verrott, took on young Sawtooth at about 10 years of age. These young performers had to convey both vulnerability as institutionalized children and the emerging threat that culminates in the staff massacre. Their casting ensured continuity of physical traits and demeanor with the adult versions, allowing the audience to connect the prologue directly to the later attacks on the students. Supporting roles filled out the institutional and peripheral elements. Anne McPherson played Dr. Brendan Ryan, the psychiatrist overseeing the sanatorium in 1974. McPherson's performance in the prologue established the professional clinical atmosphere that collapses under the brothers' escape and the subsequent patient riot. Kristen Harris portrayed Dr. Anne Marie McQuaid, whose visit and lost hairpin inadvertently facilitate the escape. Harris's role required conveying professional curiosity, turning to horror as the situation deteriorates. Dave Harms appeared as the dead porter, contributing to the body count and the sense of the facility's failed security. Uncredited appearances included Mark Kayazik as Boxhead, Michael LaRocque as a mental patient, Glenn Thompson as Bobby, and director Declan O'Brien himself as a doctor in a short film segment, adding layers of atmosphere and insider participation. The emphasis on local Winnipeg and broader Canadian talent extended beyond the leads. The Skene family's involvement, Sean and Dan as the adult brothers, their father coordinating stunts, created a cohesive unit for the film's most demanding physical sequences. Pudovic's Winnipeg roots further anchored the production in the region where principal photography took place over a compressed 19-day schedule. This approach reduced logistical costs while ensuring performers familiar with harsh winter conditions could handle the outdoor snowmobile and storm sequences realistically. The casting of models turned actresses such as Davis and Lieb brought visual polish and contemporary appeal to the student group, balancing the grotesque practical makeup effects applied to the cannibals by designers including Doug Morrow. Gorin and Haber selections prioritized performers who could handle both the interpersonal drama of a group of friends and the visceral demands of a slasher prequel. The dual roles for Sean Skene and Scott Johnson allowed efficient use of talent while deepening thematic links between past and present. The young actors' portrayals of the brothers' childhoods provided necessary backstory without requiring extensive exposition, relying instead on visual storytelling and the performer's ability to suggest latent menace. Ensemble chemistry among the student cast, Pudavik, Davis, Lieb, Vanessa, Tatarin, Zink, Armstrong, and Kendrick, proved essential for selling the early scenes of camaraderie, flirtation, and minor conflicts that make their later isolation more effective. Physical preparation varied across the cast. Davis's taekwondo background informed her character's capacity for resistance. Pudavik's gymnastics experience supported agility in chase and escape sequences. The Skene brothers' stunt experience, combined with their father's coordination, enabled complex fight choreography and practical effects integration without excessive reliance on digital augmentation. Makeup and effects teams worked closely with the actors portraying the deformed brothers to ensure the prosthetics allowed sufficient range of motion and expression, particularly for three finger signature hand and one eye's limited vision. The 1974 sequences demanded a different tonal register from the contemporary student storyline. Macpherson and Harris established the institutional formality that the young brothers shatter, while the child actors conveyed both the constrained environment of the sanatorium and the seeds of the violence that defines the franchise. This temporal split in the narrative required casting that could support both periods convincingly, with the adult performers carrying the bulk of the runtime after the prologue. Subsequent careers of several cast members illustrate the film's position as a career waypoint rather than an endpoint. Pudavik moved into sustained television success with Mohawk Girls and Working Moms. Davis advanced to superhero and historical action roles. Lee built a steady television presence, including Heartland and Shadowhunters. Sean Skene expanded into directing and producing, notably with Shorzy, while continuing stunt work. These trajectories reflect the Canadian industry's interconnected nature, where horror genre work often serves as a platform for broader opportunities. The production's decision to film in Manitoba and prioritize regional talent created a cohesive company atmosphere. Shared local knowledge of the winter landscape informed performances during exterior scenes, while the abandoned institutional location provided authentic textures that the actors could respond to organically. Casting choices reinforced the film's dual focus on the origins of the cannibal brothers and the vulnerability of ordinary young people who wander into their territory. Each performer contributed specific qualities: athletic capability, emotional accessibility, physical imposing presence, or institutional authority that collectively supported the narrative structure as both origin story and standalone survival horror. The result was an ensemble calibrated for the constraints and opportunities of a modestly budgeted direct to video entry that nonetheless aimed to expand the franchise's mythology through carefully selected faces and bodies capable of embodying both the human and the monstrous. Wrong Turn 4, Bloody Beginnings, 2011, production development and pre production by the time Wrong Turn 4. Bloody Beginnings entered development. The franchise it belonged to had already undergone a fairly dramatic transformation. The original Wrong Turn, 2003, directed by Rob Schmidt from a premise credited to writer Alan B. McElroy, had been a modestly budgeted theatrical backwoods slasher release starring Eliza Dushku and Desmond Harrington. Its sequel, Wrong Turn 2, Dead End, 2007, directed by Joe Lynch, pushed the series in a more self-aware, blackly comic direction, premiered at the Film for Fright Fest Festival in London, and went on to become the best reviewed entry in the franchise, eventually grossing around $9.2 million in home videos sales. Wrong Turn 3, Left 4 Dead to 2009, marked a turning point in the series' distribution model. It was the first installment released directly to DVD in North America rather than getting any theatrical run at all. And it was also the directorial debut within the franchise of writer director Declan O'Brien, who wrote and directed it. Despite a lukewarm critical reaction to Left 4 Dead, its home entertainment performance was evidently strong enough to justify continuing the series in the same direct to video format, and 20th Century Fox Home Entertainment moved forward with a fourth installment. O'Brien returned as writer and director, a decision reference sources, including Wikipedia and IMDb, attribute solely to him, though it is worth noting that at least one contemporaneous UK trade write up listed a different screenwriting credit for the finished film, an inconsistency that appears nowhere else in the record and is best treated as an outlier rather than a confirmed co writing credit. In interviews conducted around the time of production, O'Brien described being approached again by the studio after the sales performance of Left 4 Dead with an explicit request that the fan favorite cannibal Three Finger be brought back into the fold. Rather than simply continuing the story where the third film left off, O'Brien and the production elected to reposition the series as a prequel, using bloody beginnings to dramatize the origin of the three central mutant antagonists: Three Finger, Sawtooth, and One Eye, collectively referred to in the film as the Hilliker Brothers. The film was structured around two intertwined timelines: a 1974 set prologue depicting the brothers as adolescent patients at the fictional Glenville Sanatorium in West Virginia, where they orchestrate a violent escape and hospital wide massacre, and a 2003 set main narrative, deliberately timed to align with the year in which the original 2003 film takes place, following a group of Western University students who stumble into the abandoned asylum during a snowstorm. This dual Timelian approach allowed the production to simultaneously deliver an origin story for longtime viewers of the franchise, while still following the standard slasher template of a group of young adults being picked off one by one that had defined every prior entry. The film was produced by Kim Todd, with Eric Feig and Robert Kulzer serving as executive producers, both names tied to the German co financing and international sales apparatus, Constantin Film, that had backed the series since at least its second installment, alongside Summit Entertainment as a production partner. As with the previous two sequels, the production was financed and mounted on a comparatively small scale. Reported figures for the film's budget cluster around the $2-3 million range, consistent with the tightly controlled costs typical of a direct to video horror sequel expected to recoup primarily through home entertainment sales rather than box office receipts. Casting continued the pattern established by the two prior O'Brien associated sequels of building the ensemble largely from Canadian talent based around the Winnipeg production hub the series had shifted to. Jenny Pudavik, Tenika Davis, Caitlin Wong, and Tara Venisa were cast in the lead roles of Kenya, Sarah, Bridget, and Jenna, with Ali Tatrin, Victor Zink Jr., Dean Armstrong, and Samantha Kendrick filling out the remainder of the trapped college students as Lauren, Kyle, Daniel, and Claire. For the 1974 prologue, Kristen Harris and Anne McPherson were cast as Dr. Anne Marie McQuaid and Dr. Brendan Ryan, the two doctors whose tour of the asylum cell ward C sets the plot's violence in motion. The production reused and expanded the series' established creature performers, Sean Skene, who had embodied Three Finger in earlier installments, returned in the dual role of both adult Three Finger and one of the Doom students, Vincent, while Scott Johnson played both adult Sawtooth and an orderly, and Daniel Skene played One Eye. To depict the brothers as teenagers in the 1974 sequences, the production cast Blane Cypurda, Brian Verrott, and Tristan Carlucci as the young versions of Three Finger, Sawtooth, and One Eye respectively, a doubling of adult creature performers into secondary human roles. and of younger actors into the adolescent versions of those same creatures. That reflects the kind of resourceful, budget conscious casting typical of the series' direct to video era. Filming principal photography took place in Manitoba, Canada, continuing the geographic shift the franchise had made with its third installment when production moved north of the border to take advantage of Canadian production infrastructure and provincial incentives. For Bloody Beginnings, the production found an unusually evocative practical location for its central setting. Rather than building a studio version of the abandoned Glenville Sanatorium, the crew shot extensively inside the former Brandon Mental Health Center, a real still standing institutional complex in Brandon, Manitoba, roughly 2 hours' drive from Winnipeg. The building has a genuine and lengthy institutional history. Originally constructed in 1890 as a provincial reformatory for boys before being repurposed the following year as the Brandon Asylum for the Insane, later renamed the Brandon Hospital for Mental Diseases in 1919, and eventually the Brandon Mental Health Center. Portions of the complex, including the large parkland building that anchors the site, dated back over a century by the time the production arrived, and the facility had by then ceased operating as an active psychiatric hospital, leaving behind aging wards, corridors, and equipment that gave the location an atmosphere no set, built from scratch, could easily replicate. Journalists invited to visit the set during filming described the effect vividly. A MovieWeb set visit report filed after a trip to Brandon recounted arriving at the facility after a lengthy flight and drive and being struck by its unsettling, decayed grandeur, comparing its mood to that of the Overlook Hotel from The Shining, though, as the report noted. This was a real former asylum rather than a fictional hotel. O'Brien personally guided visiting press through the building, including a room that had once been used for shock therapy, which the production repurposed for a scene establishing the Hilliker brothers' abusive treatment at the hands of the asylum staff, a sequence intended to contextualize why the young brothers turn so violently on the doctors and orderlies once they break free. The same report described watching cast members rehearse a sequence on one of the facility's interior balconies, a location that factors directly into one of the film's more elaborate set piece kills involving barbed wire. A separate report from Bloody Disgusting, filed by a journalist flown up from Southern California specifically to visit the location, recorded temperatures as low as roughly 20 degrees below zero during the shoot, brutal conditions that, if anything, worked in the production's favor, since the story itself takes place during a blizzard that strands its characters at the sanatorium. Cast and crew contended with the cold, both inside the aging, unheated sections of the facility and outdoors, where practical snowmobile sequences were filmed on location. One later UK review wryly observed that the snowmobiles used throughout the film's chase sequences appear to have consumed a disproportionate share of the budget, given how frequently and prominently they appear on screen, eventually being commandeered by the cannibal antagonists themselves during the film's climax. Michael Marshall served as the film's cinematographer. The visual approach taken on Bloody Beginnings, shot on a modest budget in the depths of a Manitoba winter, largely within a single sprawling practical location, leaned toward functional, close quarters coverage rather than the more polished, expansive photography of the franchise's earlier theatrical entries. Some critics who later reviewed the finished film were unsparing about this aesthetic, with one UK outlet describing the cinematography as having the flat, low fidelity look of muddy video captured in tight medium shots. Practical makeup and creature effects remained central to the production, in keeping with the franchise's long standing emphasis on physical prosthetics for its cannibal antagonists over digital effects. The special makeup effects crew included Don Greenberg and Steven Kostansky, both credited as assistant special makeup effects artists, alongside Jennifer Mackney as key makeup artist and Tamara Harrod as key hairstylist. Kostansky's presence on the crew is a small but notable footnote in retrospect. Based in Winnipeg at the time, he would go on, alongside his collaborators in the local genre filmmaking collective Astron 6, to build a career as a director and effects artist on genre features such as Manborg, and later Psycho Gorman. Costume supervision on the shoot was handled by Paula Dunfield. Set reports place the production underway by March 2011, giving the filmmakers roughly 7 months to complete photography, post production, and marketing ahead of the film's scheduled autumn home entertainment release. Post production editing on Bloody Beginnings was handled by Stein Meistad, who cut the film in the months following the Manitoba shoot and would go on to edit the franchise's next installment as well, giving the two prequel entries a measure of continuity behind the camera in addition to sharing a director. Post production on a project of this scale and budget centered heavily on integrating the practical gore and prosthetic effects captured on set with the surrounding footage. Timing the film's kill sequences, including the barbed wire hanging and decapitation, the butchering of the character Daniel, and the climactic razor wire trap for maximum impact within the finished cut. Marketing materials issued around the film's home entertainment release promoted the DVD and Blu ray edition as containing bonus footage that was, in the studio's own description, too graphic for theatrical release. This framing effectively acknowledged what the film's distribution path had already made clear. With no theatrical run planned in North America, the unrated home video cut was free to include gorier or more extended violence than would typically clear for a theatrical rating, a strategy that had become a selling point for direct to video horror sequels generally, and for this franchise, specifically since its move away from cinemas. Music the score for Wrong Turn 4. Bloody Beginnings was composed by Claude Foisy, who would go on to score the subsequent installment, Wrong Turn 5, Bloodlines 2012, giving the two Wire Bryan directed prequel films a consistent musical voice across their releases. Beyond the score itself, the film's closing credits feature an original song contributed by a member of its own cast. Scott Johnson, the actor who played the adult Sawtooth and doubled as an orderly in the 1974 prologue, wrote a piece of music used over the end credits. Its existence was confirmed during the same on-set press visit that toured the Brandon facility, when visiting journalists were shown an early sizzle reel for the film set to Johnson's composition, a detail that stood out to at least one reporter present. Despite the surrounding footage being kept largely under wraps to avoid spoiling the film's skills ahead of release, Raleigh's theatrical Wrong Turn 4. Bloody Beginnings did not receive a conventional theatrical release in North America. This continued the pattern set by Wrong Turn 3, Left for Dead, which had been the first entry in the series to bypass cinemas entirely in favor of a direct to video launch. By the time Bloody Beginnings was ready for release, the franchise had fully settled into that distribution model, with its budget, marketing, and unrated cut all built around a home entertainment debut rather than a box office run. The closest the film came to a theatrical style public exhibition took place overseas, nearly a year after its American home video release, when it screened as part of the Film for Fright Fest Genre Festival in London in late August 2012. Fright Fest had a long standing relationship with the franchise. The second film in the series had also premiered there in 2007, and the festival's programming gave Bloody Beginnings a rare big screen audience, generating reviews from outlets covering the event, including Little White Lies and Cineview, alongside other genre films screening that year. Coverage of the Fright Fest screening tended to frame the film within the broader lineage of backwoods cannibal horror, with one reviewer likening its tone to a collision between Tobe Hooper's original The Texas Chainsaw Massacre and its own modern remake, home media in the United States, Wrong Turn 4. Bloody Beginnings was released on DVD and Blu-ray on October 25, 2011, distributed by 20th Century Fox Home Entertainment. The release arrived as an unrated cut, marketed with the promise of additional graphic content beyond what a theatrical version could have carried, reinforcing the film's identity as a home video first product rather than a delayed theatrical release. International rollout followed a staggered schedule typical of the studio's catalog releases. In the United Kingdom, the film reached DVD and Blu ray shelves in late August 2012, time to follow its Fright Fest screening earlier that same month, giving UK audiences and critics a near simultaneous festival and retail release, rather than the roughly 1 year gap that separated the North American theatrical adjacent and home video windows. Running time is listed at approximately 93 minutes in most North American releases, with some UK listings citing a slightly longer 96-minute cut. The film's packaging and marketing continued. The franchise's established visual branding, foregrounding its mutant cannibal antagonists on cover art in keeping with prior entries. Following its home video run, Bloody Beginnings took its place as the first half of a two-film prequel arc, with Declan O'Brien returning to write and direct a direct sequel, Wrong Turn 5, Bloodlines, released the following year in 2012 and continuing directly from the events of the Sanatorium massacre depicted in Bloody Beginnings. Reception box office because Wrong Turn 4. Bloody Beginnings bypassed theatrical distribution. It did not generate a conventional box office gross. Its commercial performance instead has to be measured through home entertainment sales. And by that metric, the film earned approximately $3.6 million, dollars, a figure tracked by the numbers as the film's total lifetime earnings. Set against the wider financial history of the franchise, that figure represents a marked decline from the series' home video high point. Ron turned to Dead End, released in 2007 with a larger $4 million budget and a cast that included recognizable names such as Henry Rollins, had grossed roughly $9.2 million in home video sales, more than double what Bloody Beginnings would go on to earn. By its fourth installment, the franchise was operating with a smaller budget, a cast built entirely from lesser known Canadian talent rather than any recognizable star, and a release strategy aimed squarely at an established niche horror audience rather than a broader crossover viewership. Against a reported production budget in the $2 to $3 million range at $3. 6 million home entertainment gross suggests the film was likely a modest commercial success on its own terms for its distributor, even if it fell well short of the series' earlier benchmarks. Though full accounting of ancillary revenue from rentals, television licensing, and later digital and streaming distribution is not part of the publicly available figures. Critical response on the review aggregation website Rotten Tomatoes, Wrong Turn 4. Bloody Beginnings holds an approval rating of 67% based on reviews from 7 critics with an average rating of 5. 3 out of 10, a small sample size reflective of the limited traditional press coverage typically afforded to direct-to-video horror sequels, but one that nonetheless points to a more divided reception than the film's straightforward B-movie premise might suggest. Among the individual reviews collected by Wikipedia, Steve Barton of Dread Central rated the film 2. 5 out of 5, memorably describing it as the Congo of slasher movies, a reference intended to characterize it as an objectively bad film that remains, despite or because of that, enjoyable to watch. Anton Bittel, reviewing the film for Little White Lies out of its Fright Fest screening, took a more measured view, acknowledging that the film delivers precisely what franchise fans would expect from it, while criticizing its cast of victims as largely interchangeable and its plot as derivative of prior installments. The most enthusiastic notice came from William Bibiani of Crave Online, who rated the film 7.5 out of 10 and praised it as a movie fully aware of its own identity and ambitions, delivering on genre expectations and occasionally exceeding them. At the more critical end, Charles Webb of Twitch Film argued that the franchise, like many long-running horror series before it, had reached a point of diminishing returns by its fourth entry, finding little to specifically recommend about this installment. Coverage beyond the reviews aggregated on Wikipedia was largely unfavorable. Starburst magazine's review was particularly scathing, framing the film as evidence that the backwoods horror subgenre had lost its way in recent years, arguing that where the original 2003 film had been a solidly derivative thriller and Dead End had improved on it with a wittier reality television framing device. The series had gone into steep decline with Left 4 Dead and reached its low point with Bloody Beginnings. The review was especially critical of the film's visual presentation, comparing its look unfavorably to cheaply shot television drama. The Canadian outlet Exclaim was similarly dismissive, characterizing the film as an unremarkable direct-to-video prequel populated by an anonymous cast of victims, while still acknowledging that the prologue sequence delivers on the film's promise to depict the cannibal trio's violent origins. Reviews filed out of the film's Fright Fest screening in 2012, including from Cinevio and Box Office Buzz, tended to situate the film within the broader lineage of backwoods cannibal horror rather than evaluate it purely on its own merits, generally treating it as a competent but unremarkable continuation of a franchise that had long since ceased breaking new ground. Taken together, the critical response to Wrong Turn 4 Bloody Beginnings reflects a fairly consistent set of observations across outlets. Reviewers broadly agreed that the film delivered the gore, creature design, and slasher mechanics that the franchise's existing fanbase would expect, anchored by its unusually atmospheric real world asylum location and its prologue detailing the Hilliker brothers' origins, while criticizing its interchangeable cast of young victims, a plot offering little beyond the established formula, and production values that several critics felt fell short, even over the franchise's own prior direct to video entries. Separately from the critical consensus, Wikipedia notes that the film received a comparatively more mixed reaction from the franchise Wrong Turn 4, Bloody Beginnings. Where to watch? Wrong Turn 4, Bloody Beginnings. Rent Wrong Turn 4, Bloody Beginnings on Fandango. Or buy it on Fandango, critics reviews, audience reviews, my rating cast and crew, Declan O'Brien, director, Sean Skene, Vincent, Scott Johnson, Sawtooth, Jennifer Pudovic, Kenya, Tenika Davis, Sarah, Caitlin Lee, Bridget. More like this. Photos, Wrong Turn 4. Bloody Beginnings movie info as existing fan audience, suggesting a modest gap between critical and fan reception of the kind not uncommon for long-running genre franchises operating well past their original theatrical incarnation. Declan O'Brien talks Wrong Turn 4. Bloody Beginnings exclusive. Director Declan O'Brien talks Wrong Turn 4. Bloody Beginnings, shooting in an old mental institution, the incredible amount of blood he used, and much more. Back in March, I had the chance to visit the set of Wrong Turn 4, Bloody Beginnings in Brandon, Manitoba, Canada, where I got to meet director Declan O'Brien and his cast. I recently had the chance to speak with Declan O'Brien again to discuss the Blu ray and DVD release of this horror prequel, which will arrive on October 25. This new movie takes us back to the early days of the Cannibal Brothers, Three Finger, Sawtooth, and One Eye, as they feast on a group of young college friends who lose their way. Here's what the director had to say below. You directed the third movie, and you talked a bit on the set about what you wanted to do with this fourth movie, bringing it back to the roots of the franchise. Can you talk about crafting that initial concept? Declan O'Brien. What I really wanted to do with this one is to give audiences another turn. If we keep on going down the same road with the same type of movie and there's nothing different, well, why would people want to come back? The good thing between Wrong Turns 1, 2, 3, and now 4 is each one is different. Each one has a different tone. Each one has a different setting, a different cast of characters. With this one, I wanted to go back and do a prequel and tell the origin story of how these cannibal hillbillies came about and why they're there. We explained all that in the pre-title sequence, and it's quite a long one, about 10 minutes before the title. Then we cut from 1974 to 2003, before the events of the first movie took place, the winter before. That was quite a find you had with that hospital. It was cool just walking around and exploring and seeing how naturally creepy that place really was. Can you talk about how big of a find that place was for you? Declan O'Brien. Finding the Brandon Mental Health Facility, which included the original equipment in it, and 250,000 square feet, 4 floors, original shop machines. It was just huge. You can't really recreate that. It was built in 1910 and it was a scary place to shoot too. I was getting creeped out just walking around there. Declan O'Brien. Well, I'll give you a little anecdote. You know, the earphones I listen with, the headphones that pick up the boom microphones and stuff like that. Well, every night we would usually change floors. I would usually have one thing on one floor and another thing on another floor. Instead of going back to my trailer, because that would take too long and it's too cold, I never saw the inside of my trailer. I would just set up a little room with a desk and my laptop and my coat, all that stuff on each floor. I would set up a room on each floor we were shooting. We were set up on the second floor one night and we finished up on the first floor. I forgot to change out all my stuff from the second floor to the first floor. So it was still sitting up there. We call wrap, and I'm finding myself walking down a very dark second floor hallway with a flashlight in my hand, like one of my characters, when I hear something whisper into my ear. I don't know what the words were, but it was something like, "Where is he? Did you find him?" It was something like that. And you could have peeled me off the ceiling because somebody was talking into the boom microphone on the other floor, but it sounded like they were right in my ear. So I ripped off my headphones, grabbed my stuff, and ran for the bus. That's awesome. Can you talk a bit about finding this cast? I believe they are all local Canadian actors. So, can you talk about assembling this team together and what they really brought to the table? Declan O'Brien. We looked all throughout Canada, Vancouver, Winnipeg, Toronto, Montreal. It was kind of like a nationwide Canada casting search. I went to various places and auditioned people, and I was just looking for the right mix of personalities. And I think we found a very, very good cast. Each and every person is very distinct and brings out the characters' personalities. And they're a bit like their characters. It was natural. I thought it was cool because you often see in movies like this, there's the jock and all these other archetypes. You have these characters set up, but they're not quite the same ones we're used to seeing. Declan O'Brien, yeah, they're not on the nose. I think they're a little more realistic of what college kids are like. They're individual enough that you get to actually understand their motivations and care about what happens to them. Yeah, they're not your classic cardboard characters you just kill. It was impressive watching on the set the amount of blood you were using. I just got to see the film and it was a lot of fun. And there are some really bloody moments in there. How far did you really want to take the level of blood and gore in this? Declan O'Brien. It was like Carrie times 10, right? For that hanging scene where Victor Zing Jr. is underneath her and trying to pull her down. I had to shoot some continuity of what he would look like after before the scene. The makeup people said to me, "We don't know how he's going to look after the blood falls on him. So, how do you want to do it?" I said, "It's simple. Take a bucket of blood and dump it over his head. He's going to be covered. That way, you don't have to worry about continuity so much." That shot where he turns around and looks at his girlfriend's neck still pumping, and we push into him with that huge scream, that's one of my favorite shots. It's hysterical. Yeah, you have some great screamers on this cast too. Declan O'Brien. Oh yeah, Jennifer Pudovic is always good for a scream, and of course Dean Armstrong when he's dying during the fondue scene. Oh man, Declan O'Brien. That was pretty brutal, wasn't it? Yeah, I was not expecting that. When I was on the set, I saw the hanging scene, so it set me up a little bit. So I knew it would be very bloody and very gory. I was cool with that. But that fondue scene, I was not expecting at all. That was really awesome, though. Declan O'Brien, it takes it to a whole other level. What's funny for me is I find it really, really horrific, but perversely funny at the same time. They have a guy dying, being eaten alive, and the other one wants to take a vote. Sas, whether or not they want to go. The thing I liked about the fondue scene is when you think of cannibals, you think about these guys gnawing on flesh. With this, it's like they're cooking. It was hilarious to me. I guess it's kind of wrong that I thought it was hilarious, but it was still hilarious. Declan O'Brien. It is hilarious. One of our promotional items is the Cannibal Cookbook, so make sure you get a copy. Luxus. Is there something about the production, either a scene you shot or something else, that will really stick out when you think back about Wrong Turn 4? Bloody Beginnings? Declan O'Brien. Well, listen, I just have to say, Brian, I had a really fun time shooting this movie. I had a very good cast, very nice people, and a really hard working crew. There were horrible conditions, but no drama. We got lucky with the Brandon site. I mean, being out in Brandon for 10 days, that's like going on a camping trip from hell. It was just so much fun. I really, really enjoyed making the movie, and I think everybody else did too, and everybody really stepped up. For doing a movie in 19 days of this scope and size, it was pretty challenging. Do you see this as the end of this franchise? If there's a way, would you come back to direct a fifth one? Declan O'Brien. Sure, I mean, it really depends, I'm sure, on the numbers for the DVD. But if it does as well as Wrong Turn 3 did, I'm sure we'll be talking about it again. Fox really likes the franchise, and it's really fun and challenging. Thinking up new ways to kill people on film that hasn't been seen before. I don't think we've seen the fondue scene. I don't think we've seen the snowmobile shredding scene. So that sort of stuff makes me happy. Gives me a sense of accomplishment. I wouldn't mind trying to top myself. Where would you see the brothers though, story wise? What do you think would work with them coming off of this movie? Declan O'Brien. Oh, yeah. You said the next one in between this movie and the first movie. You still have the three brothers alive and a whole new story to tell how they get that cabin in the woods of theirs. Very true. That would definitely work. I believe you're also writing a movie called Hijacked. That has a really good cast as well. Is there anything you can say about that or where you are in the process right now? Declan O'Brien. Yeah. Vinnie Jones and Dominic Purcell are in it. This is a movie I wrote some years ago that I was going to direct some years back. We were getting a star attached, and I had to go off and make another movie. What the producers did is they brought another writer director in. So they shot in Louisiana, I think last month. It was a pleasant surprise to get the call saying, "Hey, we're making your movie that part." Finally, what would you like to say to either fans of the franchise or horror fans in general about why they should pick up Wrong Turn 4? Bloody Beginnings on Blu ray or DVD on October 25. Declan O'Brien. I think Wrong Turn 4 gives you a great mix of suspense and terror, along with Gonzo, over the top horror. It mixes pretty well, so for fans of slasher films, they'll get what they want. For fans of traditional horror, they'll get the frights that they wanted as well. Hopefully, they'll like it. Great. Well, that's all I have, Declan. Thanks for talking to me. It was good speaking with you again. Declan O'Brien. Good talking to you again, too. Thank you so much. You can pick up Declan O'Brien's Wrong Turn 4. Bloody Beginnings on Blu ray and DVD starting October 25. In case you missed it, you can click here to read my set visit report for Wrong Turn 4. Bloody Beginnings. Wrong Turn 4, Bloody Beginnings. This week we go back to the beginning with Wrong Turn 4, Drum Bloody Beginnings. Returning guest and queen of the B movie and culinary horror Sarah Stubbs, Final Girls Feast, is on Mike's side championing the merits of this Blizzard set, asylum located slasher. Meanwhile, Devon has recruited first time guest Sean Abley, creator and co editor of Queer Horror, a film guide to talk about why returning director Declan O'Brien just doesn't have the juice to make this anything more than standard direct to video fare. With the tongue planted firmly in cheek, some forward thinking queer representation, practical effects, real snow, a pretty spooky on-set location, and a show-stopping human fondue, gory as hell kill, at the very least, Bloody Beginnings marks a solid rebound over the dreadful, in Mike's eyes, third entry. If you like what you're listening to, make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcast feeds. Please take a moment to rate and review us on the Apple Podcast app or rate us on the Spotify app. Reviews and 5-star ratings help new listeners find us every day, and we greatly appreciate the feedback and support. Check out our website for easy access to our full catalog of shows with hundreds of hours of free content. You can search the catalog, leave a review, and even leave us feedback all from the site. Go to www.podandthependulum.com to check it out. If you have the means, consider becoming a patron today and support the show. Patreon members get exclusive full-length episodes, audio fan commentaries, exclusive minisodes, and more. Join today at patreon.com podandthependulum. Like what you're hearing, please rate, review, and subscribe to us on Apple Podcast or wherever you get your shows so more people can discover us. Follow us on Twitter at Pod and Pendulum. Become a patron today for more bonus content and full-length exclusive episodes. Patreon. Compod and the Pendulum, listen on. Featured episodes. Final Destination Bloodlines, Night of the Living Dead 1968, Dawn of the Dead, the 7th year anniversary show Mailbag, The State of Horror, What We're Excited For, and The Pod's Journey. The Crypt Tapes, Season 1 recent episodes, Reanimator, Evil Dead Burn, The Blob 1988 and Remembering Chuck Russell, Patron Unlock Plus, Mike Talks CHUD on WGBH Wednesday Season 2, Wednesday Season 1, The Addams Family 2, The Addams Family 2019, Backrooms, The Addams Family 2019, See all 2010's horror episodes, Creep 2 found footage episodes, Creep 2 horror movies on Netflix episodes, Creep 2 2020's horror episodes. The 7th year anniversary show mailbag, The State of Horror. What we're excited for and the pod's journey. Special episodes. The 7th year anniversary show mailbag, The State of Horror. What we're excited for and the pod's journey. Interviews episodes. David Bertolino, founder of Spooky World, author behind the screams at Spooky World. Halloween episodes. David of Spooky World, author behind the screams at Spooky World. Browse episodes by category. 2010's Horror 1, Found Footage 1, Horror Movies on Netflix 1. 2020's Horror 1, Special Episodes 1, Interviews 1, Halloween 1, Support on.